Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. I've been talking a lot here recently about immigration and the intersection between immigration and tax. And I think this video is, well, it is in line with that, it is in that same vein. Let me be clear, I want to preface this by saying this is sort of hypothetical. This is just me sort of speculating and throwing out, sort of riffing off some ideas here. And I keep coming back to this article from Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Online TM6 Form for Visitors to Thailand, coming on May 1. There's more. I originally was going to make this video talking about the so-called tourist tax, which we'll get into when we're quoting this article, which it looks like that's being put on the back burner. But it also looks like I'm kind of concentrating on this article because there's more going on here under the surface. I think there is. I could be wrong, but I think there's something more going on under the surface here. Thought of making this video again, Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Online TM6 Form for Visitors to Thailand, coming on May 1. Quoting directly, and as we discussed in other videos, immigration has said, hey, we're sticking with the old TM6 system, which is based on the old raw law, and we're not going to be rolling out some of these new systems. And I'll get into that in a minute, but at first glance, I thought they were talking about the Thailand immigration system and this interplay with the DTV. It does look like they are talking about that is sort of being delayed, but more to the point, I think is maybe issues associated with this push by, for lack of a better term, by a bunch of foreign interloping tax stamp pimps who have come into Thailand and are operating in complete violation of Thai law regarding restricted occupations and seem to be pushing the notion, incorrectly I think in many cases, that foreigners have to file taxes and have to do all of this stuff here, when in reality, that may not necessarily be the case. Again, every case is different. It depends on the underlying facts of the given case. But setting all that aside, I've discussed that in other videos, I was thinking initially about this tourism tax in this article, and then I started thinking more broadly. Let me go ahead and just quote directly. Quote, the Ministry of Tourism and Sports is preparing to promote the online TM6 immigration form, which will be compulsory for all foreign arrivals entering Thailand as of May 1. So as they discussed, we're not doing all this weird new digital system that they were talking about, the new things coming online. No, it looks like that's delayed, at least for the immediately foreseeable future, maybe forever, you never know. TM6, though, has been digitized. The arrival departure card people were used to, that got suspended. It's been suspended now for about a year. And now they've said, okay, we're rolling it back out, but it's going to be digitized. And we're sidelining all of these pie-in-the-sky plans for digitization and how that interacts with tax off to the side while we roll out this TM6. Quoting further, which will be compulsory for all foreign arrivals entering Thailand as of May 1. So this new digital TM6 system starts May 1. Quoting further, though the government is reluctant to start collecting the 300 baht tourism fee this year. So that's the tourism tax. This has come up and down. We've been talking about this is almost 5 years now, I expect, because I remember talking about it in 2020 because they were still talking about it. Even going back into 2019, they were talking about tourism tax, as I recall. Frankly, I think it's a terrible idea. They need to scrap this. The optics are terrible. There's other ways to tax the tourists without just directly applying it to people coming through at the beginning. It puts people off, frankly. So does all this talk about this, everybody that's been here longer than whatever, and our interpretive dance session of Thai tax law. Anybody that comes to Thailand may have to report everything to the Thais, and we may be looking at your bank accounts, and you may owe and may have to pay and may have to file and may have to do this, that, and the other thing because of our interpretation. As I've asked in other videos made contemporaneously with this one, where is a codified law that says you have to file taxes under X circumstances? Where is that codified law? Again, under the doctrine of codification here in Thailand, you need an explicitly codified law for major infringements on people. That's the way that civil law works. I would say requirement of taxation would require the codification of a promulgated law through Parliament to that effect. It doesn't come about by the interpretive dance of a bunch of interlopers who have no business talking about Thai law to begin with. And quite frankly, I have issues with bureaucrats who have come along and started saying, we can just tax and do all this stuff. Sounds an awful lot like COVID. We can just come up with it, we say so, therefore it is. Or they say, well, it's by regulation. Again, the doctrine of codification applies. Where is the law? And look, if somebody points that out, I'm happy to read it, review it, and if I need to stand corrected, I've done it in the past, I'm happy to do it again. You know, I'm not trying to dodge that. And I'm also not dying on this notion, on the notional hill, that you don't have to pay taxes in Thailand. The only thing I'm trying to say is everybody's situation is different. And depending on the underlying facts of the given case, in your case, you may or may not have to file. As I've discussed in other videos, I find it very, very wrong on both an ethical and to some extent even on a moral level, but just on a professional level to tell anybody, to give anybody one size fits all legal advice. That, you know, it's just not the way things work in the real world. That being said, stepping back from that, I think immigration, you know, you got to remember again, this current government is not some like unified monolithic thing. The parliament is fractured. The core coalition party, for whatever reason, seems to be obsessed with the World Economic Forum and all their neo-Marxist, neo-fascist nonsense emanating from the Davos set. But that being said, they seem to be trying to push through some of these things, and much like in many other countries where globalism rears its ugly head and they try to push through these things, again, it looks like there's institutional push back against this stuff. And we've definitely seen it in the United States as Trump has pulled the United States out of OECD. My opinion is Thailand should take a page from that book and not go into this to begin with. It's, to my mind, for lack of a better term, it's something like a black hole. There's no reason to go into it. Don't touch the event horizon. Just stay away from it. But the point I'm trying to make is for all this globalist push, there are pushbacks. And I think if you read between the lines on what's going on internally here with immigration, I think we're seeing a little I think we're seeing something at least of a paradigmatic pushback institutionally, at least from immigration here. Quoting further, again, and it's one man's opinion, TM6 forms were temporarily suspended by the cabinet on April 15th, 2024. When the suspension period ends on April 30th this year, a digital version of the TM6 will replace the paper-based one, said Natria Tawiwong, the ministry's permanent secretary. Mongkon Wimonrat, the ministry's deputy permanent secretary, said the government would prioritize the digital TM6 before adopting other types of entry screening planned earlier to prevent confusion among tourists. I think this is of key importance. It looks like immigration is not rolling out all of this digital system to track and trace everyone and to monitor everyone's days for purposes of tax. And let me get into why I think that's important. Quoting further, a source at the ministry who requested anonymity said that with the online TM6 forum coming soon, there is a greater likelihood the 300 baht tourism fee will be postponed. Now, again, this is my speculation, but that's one tax that it looks like immigration has said, look, that's not our business, we're pushing that off. With regard to this notion that they're going to create this digital in and out immigration system whereby they track and trace everyone and try to impose taxes on foreigners, or what a bunch of hyperbolics, frankly, people who are seemingly hyperventilating out there, they're saying that basically, oh, you'll be tracked and traced through immigration, so run out and do what the tax stamp pimps say, sheep, because we say so, and you're going to get corralled into this by the bottleneck being immigration. That, to my mind, is the implication of all of this. And what we're seeing from immigration is they're saying, hey, we're sticking to the standard Thai immigration law as set forth in the Thai Immigration Act of '79. We're reconstituting the TM6 digitally, but we're pushing back all of these digital systems that other people have been trying to bring forth because we just want to use the TM6, which then poses the question, okay, all folks that are not legally resident in Thailand, and when I say legally resident, there's only one type of legal residence in Thailand, and that's Thai permanent residence. That's the only type of legal residence that Thailand recognized from an immigration standpoint in terms of you're an actual, what we would call bona fide resident in Thailand. You have a right to remain. Everybody else in Thailand is on a non-immigrant visa. So they don't have an unfettered right of residence. So they're not legally, they may be legally resident insofar as they're physically present at a place, but it's not attached to them. It's not a bona fide residence thing like permanent residence. Reason I bring this up is here's immigration saying, hey, we're not doing any of this digital system you're trying to roll out. Between now and the end of April, it's just going to be status quo ante. It's going to be what it has been to this point. And then as of May 1, we're rolling out a digitized version of the TM6 system, which is the old arrival departure card system. That's what they're rolling out. Not, again, any of these new systems that they keep talking about. So that then poses the question, what happens if all these folks just leave before the filing deadline for any kind of tax matters in Thailand? Did immigration just leave open a loophole whereby, look, we now know you're not going to interact with anything having to do with any new system associated with Thai immigration between now and April 30. Thereafter, the only new thing that they have announced that will be in place is this new digitized TM6. Again, okay, there's a filing deadline coming up, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact date, but okay, let's say there's a filing deadline. I'm not saying anybody necessarily has to file. Again, I think that depends on your circumstances. But again, with immigration here, who have said, hey, we're not upgrading any of our systems, so immigration's just going to stay the same, poses the question to me, all these folks that are here in Thailand on non-immigrant visas, if those folks just do a border run and leave over the, like, if the deadline is X date and folks don't happen to be here that date, what does that mean? What are the ramifications of that? They say, oh, you have to file. Sometimes, I know a lot of people are hyperbolically running around saying you have to file. Again, I've talked about this at length. I think, again, it depends on the underlying circumstances. But okay, presume that. What happens if you're not in Thailand, you're not legally resident in Thailand? What happens if you're not here on the filing deadline? What happens if you return later? What are the ramifications of that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But I started thinking about it when I was thinking about why, are they saying, and I don't know that immigration meant for this to happen either. This could be an inadvertent thing. So-called loopholes, which I don't even like that term, but so-called loopholes tend to evolve that way. It just sort of happens by happenstance. It's sort of the practicalities on the ground, and then you end up with a circumstance. Well, maybe that's where we're at here. I don't know if immigration intended this. I'm not even espousing that one should, but again, if people are really, really worried about anything that happened in 2024 and, they're pulling their hair out over it and they don't really have any intention to remain in Thailand, well, if you leave before the filing deadline and, there's nothing immigration has put into place with regard to taxes, I don't see what occurs then after that series of events transpires. Interesting. I don't know the answer to that question, but again, there was something that was bugging me about this article when I was reading it. I was like, they're talking about a lot of things, but it seemed like they were talking around something. And then finally, I sort of banged myself on the head and I said, well, maybe it has to do with this tax thing. I don't know. Again, this remains speculation. We'll certainly be keeping you updated on this channel as the situation evolves.